Hello, this is part 2 of learning how to use videos to do math lessons in grade 4 or 5 math. And today we're going to be talking about rounding. So this hopefully is actually a review for you, but please follow along and do the video with me. Just humor me and maybe you'll learn a thing or two about rounding or be refreshed, because we're going to be rounding and estimating a ton in this year. Okay, grade 4 math and grade 5 math in the numbers strand. You estimate pretty much before anything that you do. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions, decimals, anything that we do with those. If we're doing an operation, we're going to estimate it first. It's easier as long as you understand how to round. Okay, so estimating is basically taking two numbers in an equation and finding numbers that are close to those, and then solving them. And it should be easier to do it in your head because the numbers are easier. Okay, so on your paper, let's read it. It says, at the beginning of almost every concept in the numbers strand of math, you will be asked to estimate before you learn the actual skill. This means that you will change the numbers that you are working with to other numbers that are close but easier to work with. Usually this will mean that you round the numbers to the nearest tens place. Sometimes you may round to the nearest ones, hundreds, thousands, or even 10,000s, or if you're grade 5, 100,000s. But let's practice rounding to the nearest tens for now. Okay, we just want to understand the concept of rounding. We'll apply it to estimating at the bottom of the sheet, but if you can understand that estimating means that we round and then solve those numbers that we rounded, your life in math is going to be so much easier this year. Okay, so let's do some groundwork. We've got, here we go. We've got a rhyme and an image here. And I'll move the chair out of the way. So the rhyme is really useful. I tend to use the rhyme when I'm reminding you of what you want to do more often than this, but some people are visual, so I'll go over that too. But so rounding, so say we're going to round this number right here, 31. So it says, find the number, look right next door, 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. So what it's basically talking about is we're going to be rounding to the nearest tens. So that means that we're going to keep a number in the tens place. It might change, it might not. And then everything after it to the right is going to turn into a 0. Okay? But before we turn that into a 0, we need to figure out if the number that we are rounding to is going to stay the same or bump up 1. Okay? So in the case of 31, we find the number and then we look right next door to the 1. And 1, we think, is it 5 or more or 4 or less? 1 is 4 or less, so we let the 3 rest. So 3 is going to stay the same in this case because 31 is closer to 30 than it is to 40. Okay? And then the 1 turns into a 0. It was always going to turn into a 0. We just didn't know if the 3 was going to be a 3 or a 4. Okay? Let's do this example together. We've got 68. So we're going to find the number. So 6 is in the tens place. And then we look right next door to 8. And we think, is 8 4 or less, or is it 5 or more? 8 is bigger than 5, so it's 5 or more. So we need to raise the score of the 6. Okay, so that means that 68 is closer to 70 than it is to 60. So if we were to put it on a number line, say I had a number line and here's 60 and here's 70, 68 is going to be about right there, right? It's just going to be a little hop from 70, and 68 is going to be quite a leap to 60, right? So that's basically all we're doing with rounding, is just figuring out which benchmark is closest to. And the benchmarks are like 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 kind of thing. Okay, those are benchmarks. Now, if that round doesn't really help you, then maybe this visual will. So this is rounding mountain. So say we're going to do 55. I'll talk about 60 in a minute, but let's do 55. And so basically, we do the same thing. We're still looking at the 5, but we need to look next door. We look at, well, that's another 5. Okay? And then we find it on here. And then if the 5 is on this side of the mountain, then it's going to be the benchmark that is lower than 55, which is 50. And if the 5 is on this side, it's going to be the benchmark that is higher than 55, which is 60. And 5 is right here, and it is moving toward the 60. So our rounding of 55 would actually turn into 60, which is funny because the one above it is sort of a trick question. When there's a 0 already at the end, no rounding necessary, okay? Well, I guess only if you're rounding to the nearest tens place. But so you don't actually need to round it, it just stays as 60, okay? Now, we could get trickier here. I'm gonna do this one with you and then I'm gonna get you to do some on your own. But it's, if we're still rounding to the nearest tens place the whole time, this whole sheet, nearest tens place. That means that we are looking at the number that's in the tens place. We're leaving everything that is before that number alone. We don't touch it, it stays the same. Turns into a 6, or it doesn't turn into a 6, it stays a 6. It's 600, doesn't change. We're focusing on the 23. Is 23 closer to 20 or is it closer to 30? We could look at the 3 and think, well, 3 is 4 or less. We let that 2 rest and it turns into 620. Okay? Same thing happens over here with the thousands. We're still looking at the tens place. Everything before it stays the same. So please pause the video, see if you can round all of these numbers, and then follow along with me and see if you got the answer. Okay, so you should have it done. On this one, we're looking at the 4s. 9 stays the same. So we're thinking, is 44 closer to 40 or is it closer to 50? 44 is closer to 40, and I know because 4 is 4 or less, and we let the other 4 rest. 492, we're looking at the 9. 4 stays the same. Now we're just thinking, is 2 4 or less or 5 or more? 2 is 4 or less, so we're going to let that 9 rest, and it's going to turn into 490. The next one we've got is 1,616. So 1,600 stays the same. We're just thinking, is 16 closer to 10 or is it closer to 20? Well, 6 is 5 or more, so that means we raise the score, and that 1 turns into a 2, and we put a 0 after it, just like we always were going to. Okay, next up we've got 2,187. So 2,100 stay the same. We're thinking just 87. Is 87 closer to 80 or is it closer to 90? 87 is closer to 90. 7 is 5 or more, so we raise the score. So it's 2,190. And lastly, we've got 6,379. So 6,300 stay the same. We're just thinking, is 79 closer to 70 or is it closer to 80? You might be able to figure out that it's closer to 80 just because it's one away, or you thought 9 is 5 or more, so we raise the score of that 7 to an 8. And there's our rounding. Okay, going to have to move this. And we're going to do estimating next. So we're going to be doing rounding and then we're going to be applying it to adding or dividing. I mean, not adding or dividing, sorry to make your heart jump. Adding or subtracting. All right, so it says estimate by rounding first, then solving. And like I said before, we're doing only rounding to the nearest tens. But I think that's all we have on here anyways. So we'll do the top 2 together. I'll get you to do the bottom 2 by yourself and then follow along and see if you got it right. So we've got 56 plus 13. So we're going to round each of those numbers and then add them together. So 56 is closer to, is it closer to 50 or 60? Well, 6 is 5 or more, so we raise the score of the 5 to a 6, and so it's closer to 60. Is 13 closer to 10 or is it closer to 20? 3 is 4 or less, so we let it rest, and we come up with a 10. We've got 60 plus 10. That equals 70. That's much easier to add together than 56 plus 13. The answer to that is 69, which is 1 away from 70. So it's not the exact answer, but it's pretty close. So if we don't need an exact answer, this is much more easy to do in our head. Okay, and then over here we've got subtracting. So we've got 58 minus 31. So we have to round both of those. 58 is closer to 60 than it is to 50, because 8 is 5 or more, so we raise the score of the 5 to a 6. And then we've got 31, and we think, is 31 closer to 30 or 40? Well, 1 is 4 or less, so we let it rest. So we we let the 3 stay the same, so it's closer to, I don't know, it's closer to 30. So 60 minus 30 is 30. Okay, and then we've got the bottom ones. So I would like you to try those on your own. So you're going to round both numbers, and then you're going to add those ones together there, subtract them there, then play the video again and follow along with me. Okay, so pause the video now, do those ones, and we'll continue on our way. Okay, so you should have those ones done. We've got 92 plus 28. So 92, we think, is that closer to 90 or 100? 2 is 4 or less, so we let it rest. So that means that 90 is closer to, or 92 is closer to 90 than it is to 100. We add, and we've got 28. And 28 is closer to what? 20 or 30? 8 is 5 or more, so we raise the score, and that makes it closer to 30 because 2 gets raised up to 3. And then we add them together, and we've got 90 plus 30, which is 120. The way I figured that out so quick in my head was 9 plus 3, I know that's 12, and then I just put a 0 at the end. Okay, and the last one over here, we've got 63 minus 49. So 63 would round to either 60 or 70. Is it closer to 60 or 70? Closer to 60, and I know because 3 is 4 or less, so I let the 6 rest. Add that subtraction sign in there, and we've got 49. We think, is 49 closer to 40, or is it closer to 50? 49 is closer to 50 because 9 is 5 or more, and we raise the score of the 4 to a 5. And then we subtract, and we get 10. Okay, so that is the basics of rounding. It's going to be a good time this year if you understand that, because you're going to be estimating a lot. So anytime you see estimating, remember that it is rounding and then solving those rounded numbers, whatever the operation is, okay? If you can remember that, you're going to have many lessons that are easy for you, okay? Excuse me. Now at the bottom of the page, it says at the bottom of the page, or each handout, you will find a textbook assignment. This is to be completed neatly on graph paper in your duotang, which should already be in there. Once complete, you will get your paper signed by the teacher. So once you're finished your assignment and you show me that you finished it on your own, or with a friend sitting beside you or whatever, but you were able to complete these questions and you understand them, or at least you think you do, then show me. I will initial. I'm not going to check over all of them, but I'm going to check that you've done it. And then you are going to grab the answer key that I have for you, and you're going to mark it yourself. You're going to take a pen and check off all the ones you got right, and then circle all the ones you got wrong, or put X's, and then you're going to figure out what you did wrong on those ones you got wrong. That might be just reviewing how to do it, checking your mistakes, or maybe asking for clarification from a teacher, EA, or friend. Maybe you misunderstood how to do it. Okay, so once you finish your textbook assignment and finish correcting, then you're going to complete the BLM, the Black Line Master, and that's in your duotang too. It's the photocopied assignment. Okay, those BLMs are going to be marked by me. You're going to keep them in your duotang. At the end of math class, you're going to put your duotang, whether you're done your assignment or not, into the bucket. The plan for me is to mark those like at lunchtime or right after lunch or whatever. And then if you have homework, have that duotang back to you before the end of the day so that you can finish it for homework. Okay, hopefully you work hard in math class and you don't need to have homework though, but it might be a reality for some of you sometimes, especially if you get distracted easily. Okay, so these videos are going to be very self-directed. You're going to need to be able to stay on task and be able to recognize when you are not understanding something, okay? And if you are caught being off task, so watching YouTube videos or playing games or whatever, something you're not supposed to be doing, while watching a video, then your privileges are going to be taken away and you're going to be closely monitored with what you're doing on the computer. Okay, so right now, computer is a privilege, it's not a right. And I could take that away. Yes, you're still going to watch videos, but you might be sitting right next to an adult while you do it.